president of the former Russian Republic of Georgia, Mikheil Saakashvili, who joins me now from Kiev. And sir, I want to get a sense from you of what the lessons that we might take from the Georgia situation in 2004 might be. And there is no doubt that the view of what is happening in Ukraine from the perspective of your own rather than troubled experience with Russia. Recently, you wrote that in Ukraine, Russia's goal is the same as in Georgia. I'm fully convinced that Putin is as eager to take over Kiev in 2014 as he was to take Tbilisi in 2008. If the West had reached or reacted properly to Georgia, Ukraine would never have happened. Do you really believe that? And if so, what do you think the West has learned, if anything, from what happened in your country?
Well, I think first of all, Becky, I have full feeling of deja vu. And let's try to describe it in medical terms. When it happened in Georgia, the Russian invasion, the West prescribed us aspirin. And basically it was a cancer, and they prescribed aspirin. Then the cancer spread with its metastasis to Crimea. And then the West keeps saying, well, we exclude surgical option. It is too risky. But at least they should apply not aspirin but chemotherapy. And what chemotherapy means, they should switch off Russian oil and gas cash machine. The point is, of course, West will also feel, the rest of organisms will also feel the pain. But if you really want to cure the disease, it's not going away. Either you do real stuff, either you cure it and you, by the way, get rid of this unhealthy habit of being dependent upon Russian gas, or, you know, Europe has 2 years supply of gas.
Okay, well,
of gas.
yeah, I get your point. I get your point. Hold on, sir. I get your point. It's not, I was going to say, I get your point, and with respect, that's not going to happen, is it? Let's see what has happened and what might happen going forward. We've seen some actions, not really sanctions, but actions from the West. And now we're hearing more from NATO, for example. And I wonder if you might react to what we heard from the Secretary General there earlier today. He talked about the importance of countries like Georgia and Ukraine coming under the collective protection of NATO. This was the warning that NATO Secretary General had for Russia today.
We will have more planes in the air, more ships on the water, and more readiness on the land.
Necessary at this point, do you think?
Well, it's absolutely necessary because we've seen some coverage and people are saying, well, pro-Russian protesters. But, you know, I'm standing on this square here in Kiev, and when we saw real, genuine grassroots protests, it had millions of people, well, hundreds of thousands at least. Now, what you see there in eastern Ukraine, 50, 100, 150 people, and basically Russian special troops. Of course, Ukrainian army is in a limbo. This is a legacy of Yanukovych and his corrupt cronies and the corrupt regime. Well, people are disgruntled also in eastern Ukraine, but I personally have more friends in eastern Ukraine and in the western of Ukraine. Most of them are absolute Ukrainian patriots. These people don't want to live under Putin dictatorship. The only reality is that they are being invaded. This is not a protest grassroots movement. This is not just local political game. This is a full-blown foreign military invasion. We are seeing the largest European country being sliced up. This is the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the 21st century, what we are seeing right now.
Listen, how concerned are you that Russia may look to extend its sphere of influence, for example, at this point over Georgia, ahead of what is potential EU integration going forward? The recent decision by the government to summon you for questioning, some say, is a move that could jeopardize Georgia-EU relations. Is Georgia in play at this point, so far as Moscow is concerned, do you think?
Well, for Moscow, all the post-Soviet space is up for grabs. And, of course, in Georgia, what they did in 2012, they have spent heavily on election politics and brought in $2 billion in a very small country, brought in government that took certain commitments, including the commitment to prosecute me. Now, but what happened now when they tried to present some charges after the European Union, the United States issued strong warnings, the Georgian present government had to back off. They basically stopped the case, and they stopped the case because it was empty, and it was basically based on what the Russians really wanted them to do. Now, having said that, one has to understand that the problem is that the way how Russia operates is through in the local corrupt cronies. And what really happened in Georgia and why Russia was so unhappy with developments in the past there was that Georgia really succeeded with reforms. When Georgia's success could not be denied even by Russian propaganda, then President Medvedev said, well, Georgia is too small and insignificant, so it doesn't really matter. The problem is that if Ukraine also succeeds after the recent events, if Ukraine, the largest country of events to which Russians can relate, can make the same kind of reforms, or at least partly the same kind of reforms which successfully Georgia implemented in terms of cracking down on corruption, in terms of consolidating state institutions,
I mean,
then Putin's power will be totally undermined. Yes, exactly. Georgia moved all the way up to being like one of the most non-corrupt and successful countries. So what happens that it's really an ideological issue. Putin cannot back off because he's risking out his power base. That's why West should never back off, because it's not only risking its values, it's basically the whole order of which it's a principal beneficiary, basically.
All right, okay. I want to get some news just coming into CNN at this point. So let me stop you just for the time being, because this is pertinent to the discussion that we're actually having here. This just in